Well, as we're talking about Kent Hovind, yeah, as I was just telling the live audience, as always, when the law caught up with a conservative Christian criminal, it wasn't because he hurts little people every day. It wasn't because he's convinced people not to take their cancer medication and instead give him $20 for sugar pills. It's not because he made a mockery of people's sincere religious belief. It's not because he has a fake doctorate and calls himself a doctor. No, no. When they finally got after Kent Hovind, it's because he cheated the tax man. He cheated the powerful. Now, to be fair, that also cheats us. But the point is, it wasn't until he messed with the money that powerful people were relying on. Just like Sam Bankman-Fried, who they would have let sell us $1 billion in useless stock. It wasn't until he sold that stock to the wealthy that there were problems. Well, the same thing with Kent Hovind. Continuing with our marathon of it's just videos, but still our marathon of Owen Morgan content. This video he put out, it's 2 years old, but it takes place 3 years after the last one we saw. It's an update on the legal woes Kent Hovind has, and will really do a lot to explain why you see less of him than you do Ken Ham. Or his son Eric, for whom I will remind you, stole Kent Hovind's scam.
The next article I wanted to take a look at is titled Judge Dismisses Creationist $536 Million Lawsuit, Calling It Delusional. This is by Hemant Mehta on the Friendly Atheist website, so let's give it a read and see what it says. Last year, creationist Kent Hovind sued the U.S. government for more than $500 million. That lawsuit has now been tossed out of the courtroom after District Judge Thomas Kent Wetherell II, wow, that is a regal name, a Trump appointee, called it frivolous and delusional and adopted a magistrate's recommendation in full. That's surprising. A Trump appointee called it frivolous and delusional. I've covered Kent Hovind before, but it's been years. I covered him a lot in the early days when I was just starting YouTube. He has this video seminar series, okay? Let me give you a little bit of background on the guy. He did all of these video seminars, like videos, about evolution and God and the beginning of the universe and the Big Bang and all of this other shit. Everything. Every subject. Like 30 of them. 2 hours long each in some cases. Made a ton of money off of them and got super giga famous. Okay? He didn't come up with all of the common Christian arguments you hear today against evolution and against the Big Bang and stuff. He didn't necessarily come up with them, but he formed them out more. And he popularized them. He's extremely charismatic and could be a cult leader if he wanted to be. I don't know if he is or not. I don't know much about the guy's personal life or what kind of group he forms around him. But he
took a whack at forming a cult. So did Ken Ham. Real quick, I'm really not going to interrupt this all that much because the longer Owen Morgan goes on with his YouTube channel, just the better the content gets. But both of these people, rather disturbingly, and Eric Hovind, tried to start what I consider to be cults. And the way they did it was through their employer-employee relationship. They would get people who believed in their cause hired on to their jobs, or to jobs within their ministries or whatever, the Creation Museum, so on and so forth. And then they would use that relationship to try to control these people, control them way beyond what a boss should be able to. And at the end, they never quite got it. At least so far, none of them have quite managed to form a cult. But I think, and again, this is an accusation which I am unable to prove, it's just my opinion. But I think it was a rather deliberate attempt. I think they knew what they were dealing with. They read the room and said, we got some culty beliefs here, and I want to cash in.
All of the character traits that a cult leader has typically. So I just wanted to listen to like a couple of minutes of his speech here. This is one of his video seminars that he released back in like the 90s and the 2000s, and then we'll discuss. A quick aside, before we actually watch the clip, I just wanted to talk about what happened to his seminar series. His son, Eric Hovind, took over his seminar series after Kent Hovind went to jail for structuring, I believe, tax evasion, tax structuring, a bunch of IRS-related things, because Kent Hovind believes you shouldn't have to pay taxes, and the IRS dinged him for it.
He shouldn't have to.
That's what happens. He went to jail for like 10 years. So Eric Hovind takes over the enterprise, and after his dad gets out of jail...
I just want to say I'm being literal. He believes he shouldn't have to. Not you. He. Big difference there. He answered only a handful of public questions about that very embarrassing scandal, but amongst them, it was clear that he did still believe that there ought to be roads, and he did still believe that the police ought to be paid for by the government. The only real objection he had to it was the fact that he, a person who is religious, had to pay taxes. Because in his mind, if you're Kent Hovind, you can just call any activity you do church work. Did you go to that dominatrix? Church work. Did you go to build a extension on your house and add a pool? Church work. We're gonna baptize in the pool. Maybe, theoretically, we could. And also, I just like to have a swim and think about church work. So, no taxes.
He says, "Thank you, son, for running things in my stead. Now, can I have it back?" And Eric says, "Nope, I'm keeping it." And blocked Kent Hovind out of everything. He copied his dad's video seminar series word for word in some cases, and stole it from him. I mean, straight up fucking stole it from the guy. Now, I don't have any sympathy for him, honestly.
All right, he's going to talk. Let me just say, before you judge Eric Hovind too harshly. Nah, go ahead, actually. That's fine. But hate him for the right things, because the rumor mill is Kent Hovind, not a very good person to be the son of, it turns out.
Kent Hovind or Eric Hovind. They're both pieces of shit.
Yeah.
But that's low. What Eric did to his dad, that's pretty.
I'm just saying. Two things. Number one, Kent Hovind reportedly had it coming. Thing number two. Really, there is no higher form of flattery. Eric Hovind said with his actions, "Father, I see you. I mean, I really see you. And look how like you I am. What would you do?" You'd steal it. I actually think that was the most meaningful, tender father-son moment they could have, is the absolute theft of a con man's empire.
Low, I've got to say. Anyway, I wanted to watch just a minute or two of this video series so you get an idea of who this guy is and his rhetoric and his style of debate and stuff. Let's watch.
If evolution is true, you could read Charles Darwin's book, page 170 or page 217. He said, hey, the death and struggle for life is a wonderful thing. That's how we get ahead. Okay? Now, the creation view says that...
I just want to point out what he's doing here. He's saying death and struggle is a good thing. That's how we get ahead. He's framing this in a very specific way. He quoted from a book about evolution. And by the way, I don't even know if that quote is true or real, actually from that book. It's something you need to look up because he lies constantly, like outright blatant lies. So don't trust literally anything this guy says. You need to look it up yourself. Everything. But aside from that, even if it is true, what he just quoted, it's completely taken out of context.
...a flood about 4,400 years ago. Now, this would make a few predictions. Based on the idea that there was a universal flood, I think I could predict that the Earth will have hundreds of layers of strata. Floods automatically do that. Moving water sorts particles in all sorts of layers. You can get a jar of dirt, add some water to it, and shake it up and set it down, and in 20 seconds you'll have layers forming in your jar. Moving water automatically sorts particles. It's called hydrologic sorting. You engineers ought to know about that. I predict, based on the Bible teaching of the flood, that there will be billions of fossils, including coal and oil, found in those layers of sedimentary rock that we find all over the Earth. I predict that there will be huge canyons and deltas showing evidence of rapid, massive erosion.
He's making predictions here, supposedly based off of the Bible. It's not actually based off of anything. He's just describing things that he sees, or that everybody sees. Billions of fossils, including...
Point of clarity, he's not actually making predictions. Owen will break it down and do a good job of explaining this, but I disagree on one point, and it's my show. So he's not making predictions, but he is like one of those bugs that looks like a different kind of animal. He is taking the shape of predictions. So the reason Kent Hovind is fixated on predictions and predicting things is funny enough, because science actually does place its value largely on the ability to make predictions. That's how you can tell if your science is good. Have you figured out what's happening? Well, a good way to know if you've figured out what's happening is to figure out what'll happen next. That's a major point of contention between actual scientists and people who are trying to scam others with the Bible. They'll say, what you have said, sir or ma'am, is I can't take that information and make a prediction with it. Whereas with my model of how the universe works, not only can we make a prediction, in fact, we rely on those predictions for our cell phones to work and our satellites to work and all of that. So that is why Kent Hovind is in this rant saying, I can make a prediction and it looks like this, and I would predict that. And what he's actually doing is taking the things that we know to be true. There are different layers of sediment. There are bones here and there and blah, blah, blah. He's taking the things that we already know to be true, and he's just coming up with a different story for how they got there, and he's calling that a prediction. And he is doing that not because he thinks it'll convince you or me, but because it will insulate his audience from the kind of arguments he knows they will hear going forward. He knows they will hear from others out in the world. This is the same scam that MAGA pulls. The same scam that MAGA uses. Their arguments, the things you hear on Fox, the things you hear on OAN, they're not meant to sway you or me. They are meant to insulate their listeners from the arguments you and I will make. That is why we need to be very smart about the arguments you and I make. That's why we should be familiar. I hate where this is going, because I'm realizing I may have to start watching this stuff, and I don't have much patience for it. But we have to be familiar with the arguments that they will be braced for and the ways that they will be braced for them. And looking at this subculture is incredibly valuable because you can expand it. You can take the lessons learned from here and add it to the larger pool of people that are in the MAGA cult, that are in the QAnon crazies. Also understand how this works as a business. They get this insulation from your arguments, from your begging of them not to go down this dark path. And they feel that's where they get the dopamine kick, the reward. I was braced. I was prepared. I had something to say when they said their smart sounding something. I had something that baffled them and made them angry. And this pleases me because it insulated me against having to feel foolish. And then they will go back. They will go see more Kent Hovind. They will say, I want to be ready for the next thing. What arguments are out there that I'll hear next that I should be preparing for tonight? That's the very thing that's happening with Newsmax, OAN, Fox. That's the very thing that's happening when people listen to Marjorie Taylor Greene and Trump, and during all their speeches when they rattle off their nonsense. That's what they are giving those people. That is why we keep having these problems over and over again. And that's why you and I keep thinking these people are dumb, or treating these people like they're dumb instead of conned, or they're evil instead of conned, because we keep thinking we present you time and time again with the truth and you choose not to see it. And that is true, but understand that they have been braced for what we were going to say already. They are following a script. We are not. Our job is to get them off that script and understand that they will flee to that script again as soon. The moment they feel threatened, they will flee back to that script. They will go to the core of that script. The things that shut down all conversation. The basic, wait, this person I'm talking to is bad and I am good, and they are worldly and I am holy. And if you manage to do it, if you get just a little foothold, understand that it's precious. But use it. Don't be afraid to use it. Find unique ways to talk to these people. Learn where their script is so you can avoid the script. Keep them off that script. Keep them having a real conversation with you where they need to listen to you to understand what is going on. If you are repeating phrases they've heard, they don't need to listen to you to follow the conversation. Bear that in mind. Let's watch some more Owen.
Putting coal and oil in the ground. This last one says huge canyons and deltas showing evidence of rapid erosion. Not necessarily rapid erosion, but he's just describing things that we see. And then he's saying the Bible predicts it. These are predictions from the Bible. These aren't predictions from the Bible. Guy's completely full of shit. He lies constantly. He fudges the numbers. He twists things around. One of my original videos, one of the first 5 videos that I ever released, was about Kent Hovind talking about the moon spinning around the Earth, right? And the moon moves away from the Earth at a rate of I don't know, 1.5 inches per year or something. I don't remember what it is. It's something like that. And he said, so that means it was closer to the Earth 3 billion years ago. Scientists say the Earth is 4.5 billion years old. If the moon was moving away from the Earth at 1.5 inches a year or whatever it is, over 4.5 billion years, that means the moon would have been inside of the Earth. That's not true. His numbers were false. His calculations were false. Everything about it was false. And in this video that I released, like video number 5, like April 2016, when I first started YouTube, I went through all of the math and pulled out all of the equations and did them, figured it out. And he just straight up lied about it. There was nothing correct about what he said. That's his strategy. He likes to throw out a bunch of claims and questions all at once, and the claims that you don't refute or the questions that you don't answer, you lose. You couldn't answer those claims or questions, so you failed. He won that round. That's his strategy. He wants it to look that way. He's a very talented rhetorician and a talented debater. He's a piece of garbage, and he lies constantly. That's his strategy. So anyways, let's listen to a couple more seconds of this just out of curiosity.
I predict there will be legends of this worldwide flood found in cultures all over the world. That's a prediction based on the biblical view. Biblical view of creation is certainly scientific. It makes predictions, okay? I predict there will be petrified trees in the vertical position, extending through all of these layers.
You know what's particularly fascinating about this guy, too? The deeper you go into his belief system, the crazier it gets. It's not just like he tries to come up with some explanations for why we have, millions of different types of species in the world. He doesn't try to explain how we got there. He takes it a step further, and he endorses really batshit crazy conspiracies or crazy ideas like Bible code. If you guys have ever heard of Bible code, it's the idea that you can take the first letter in the second word of the 5th verse of every chapter of the Bible, and you put them all together, and it'll predict Hitler or something. So he believes in Bible code. That's one of the things, or he used to at the very least. I have video of him talking about it. And also, he used to believe in something called canopy theory, where he had this idea that there was a giant ice canopy that surrounded the earth, right? And when Noah's flood happened, the ice canopy that completely enclosed the earth, God melted it, and that's where all the rain came from. And before God melted the canopy, it was a super oxygen-rich environment, which is why we had gigantic animals back then. It's just completely disconnected from reality, like all of his ideas. And the deeper into it you go, the crazier it gets. Like I said, he has 30 seminar videos or something, and it's 60 hours worth of videos or something, right? I watched all of them, every one of them. Maybe it was closer to 30 hours. I don't remember now. Anyways, I sat there for a week and watched them, all of them, because I was looking for cohesion between his theories. I wanted to see if the things that he was saying linked together. With a lot of flat Earth claims, the ideas that they propose to the problems that they have in their theory or their hypothesis, they can explain away little problems. But when you bring all of the problems together, none of the solutions fit together. They all fit like broken puzzle pieces. You can't make a cohesive explanation for why the Earth is flat. It doesn't work. I mean, you can explain this problem over here, that problem over there. You can't bring it into a cohesive theory. And that I wanted to see if that was the case with Kent Hovind also.
So that's I would say that is, in fact, the core of what makes me think a lot of these people are con artists. You'll see some, cult-eyed people on the internet. That look, the Haley Bop look. You'll see some of those folks who lack a cohesive theory or who seem to understand that their explanations don't work for the individual problems when put together. But they're not churning out big business with this stuff. it's your uncle on Facebook. But when it gets to the level of Kent Hovind, where they're claiming to try to teach people, or that rather they are trying to teach people, just wrong, that lack of a cohesive theory, a theory that doesn't contradict itself. If you were an honest person, at a minimum, you would not require somebody else to bring that up. You would bring it up. You'd say, a problem we have with this theory that we're working on right now in our labs is that blank and blank contradict each other. And we're trying to solve for that contradiction now. Here are the theories we have that we are working that might explain it. Whereas Kent Hovind, of course, would do no such thing. He chooses to ignore it, and when somebody brings this sort of stuff up in a debate, he just talks until the time is out. And it's because he does not believe these things. I truly feel that is the case. I suspect that is the situation here.
As it turns out, as far as I can tell in his video seminar series, his beliefs are very cohesive. But he does that by lying. On the granular level, he just straight up doesn't tell the truth. If you fabricate things, just make shit up whole cloth, you can...
Yeah, let me clarify. Kent Hovind is a different cat from a lot of these other people in that he does seem to understand world building better. I just want to clarify and not really correct Owen Morgan here, just something I've noticed in the years since I first saw this video. He changes his little explanations all the time. His little adapter kits for how his theories work together. So he does at least acknowledge when there are these problems. But he'll come into one debate saying, oh, it's because of this. And we've always thought it was because of this. And then he'll go into another debate and answer the same question. Oh, it's because of that. And we've always thought it was because of that. He's a liar.
Can make a story that fits together. Let's keep reading the article by Hemant Mehta about the judge that dismissed his case. Some background is helpful here because where the hell did Hovind get that number from? And who knew creationists could count that high? He was basically seeking revenge on the government for convicting him in 2006 of not paying income taxes, something he bragged about both privately and publicly, only to play dumb in the courtroom, and structuring bank transactions so that he would always withdraw just under $10,000 at a time, since anything above that would have required reporting by the bank. He always insisted he didn't have to pay taxes because his money and property belonged to God, not the government. There's some really crazy shit from back in the day that he released. Some really crazy videos of him talking shit about the IRS. It's pretty entertaining, actually. For his crimes, Hovind was sentenced to a decade in jail, while his then-wife sent to prison for a year. He got out in 2015 after 8 years. He and his wife divorced a year later. I gotta be honest, going to jail will change you, especially for 8 years. I can't believe she waited for him, but it changes you. Jail is not a good place in the United States, and we need to improve conditions in there, honestly. In addition to the prison time...
I have met very few people who have been to a U.S. jail or prison who have not had that opinion. I don't know how many more people we need to have come out the other side of that torture chamber and tell us that it does not do the thing it's supposed to do. It is just a place for torture before we change that. But hey, reason number 7,946 why we should have progressives in the House and Senate and, God willing, inshallah, the White House.
Time Hovind had to give up 10 properties, including his precious Dinosaur Adventureland, but when the government tried to sell those off, Hovind's co-defendant and church trustee Paul John Hansen was given a separate prison sentence for criminal contempt for getting in the government's way. Hovind avoided punishment for that one. In short, Hovind was criminally prosecuted for his refusal to play by the rules and for constantly playing the Christian persecution card, even when it made no sense. He basically dragged everyone in his orbit down with him. If you've seen his name pop up in the past couple years, it's because he created...
Who does that sound like? Openly defied authorities, bragged about it, thought he could never be caught. Built up a little con man empire. His family, when he went to the clink, picked it apart and stole it from him. I'm just saying we might have some predictive. We might have a predictive model here for what's going to happen to the Cheeto in chief. I can't think of a better insult. The orange Mussolini. No, that was somebody else's. Anyway, Trump. We have a pretty good predictive model for what will happen to Trump. When faced with actual judges, when faced with an actual courtroom, all this rhetorical nonsense that they have built their crimes off of, stop working. It really is it's something that makes me appreciate the court system. Not the other end of it. Not the other end of it. Not the prison system. But the court system, there are aspects of it I do like. I don't like that it's pay to play, but I do like that lies don't fly there.
A brand new, very low budget recreation of Dinosaur Adventureland. A child drowned there last year, and I remember I covered that story on the podcast. If you're curious, you can search for that video. Hovind also releases daily live streams in which he spouts insane procreationist talking points, like when he argues that various food items disprove evolution. Back to the lawsuit. According to the complaint he filed last summer, Hovind and Hansen decided to go after, you ready for this? The government, the judge in Hovind's two cases, the U.S. attorneys who prosecuted them, an IRS agent, and Hovind's own attorney from 2006 by saying they violated the plaintiff's 1st, 4th, 5th, 6th, 9th, 10th, 13th, and 14th Amendments. The men also said the defendants were imposing law illegally on land that did not belong to the U.S. This is known as a sovereign citizen argument. The lawsuit said that because the government went after Hovind and his ministry, creation science, evangelism, his life had been ruined. Here's a quote. CSE lead speaker Hovind was generally invited to speak at approximately 30 churches worldwide weekly on the average in 2006, but in 2020 it is 0. Hovind is striving daily to regain his and like ministry's popularity since his...
Do you think the sovereign citizen fad is going to go away? That's my question for you. Do you think the sovereign citizen thing will go away? I do notice, just like they were always terrified of happening to the kids, these destructive fads sort of sweep the ultra-conservative communities. And of late, sovereign citizens, really more in the last decade, in the 2010s, that was a huge thing. It's still around. You still get the occasional dingbat saying, "Oh, I'm a sovereign citizen, so you can't arrest me." Ha ha! Oh, what's happening? Why am I? Oh, I'm getting arrested. You're violating my something. I think it's been there's been enough public embarrassments with it that it might go away. Let's hope that constitutional sheriffs are next, because that is terrifying.
Release on August 7, 2015. Hovind, soon after being greeted at home to a notice of divorce, forced removal by his own son with aid of police to get off the once CSE ministry land, ending with close to full separation from all his family members and immediate family, including all his beloved 5 grandchildren. It's actually kind of sad. I'm not a part of the family. I don't know. I'm not close to them. I don't know anything about it. Hovind is a genuinely terrible person, but the dude's life was in shambles, and that's pretty fucking sad. I'm having trouble feeling pity for him because he lies so much intentionally like that, but that's pretty sad. What his son did to him was pretty fucking messed up. Let's keep reading. This is Hemant Mehta speaking. Guess what? In 2020, I also spoke at Zero Live events. It's almost like there was something happening, but Hovind made no mention of that. More to the point, he doesn't have some magical right to speak everywhere. The lawsuit also said Hovind was falsely imprisoned, the victim of religious persecution.
Mars Falcon, why are you asking me? Am I being detained?
Just as practiced in communist China, quote unquote, subject to unlawful seizures and more. There were 60 separate counts. There was also...
I'm sorry, I didn't read the first part. Let me, it's already ruined, but let me go over that ruined joke. How many sovereign citizens does it take to... Okay. Does it... Just the worst. You see, this is why I want to hire talent for being in front of the camera. One day we're going to get there. Try number 4. Mars Falcon. How many sovereign citizens does it take to change a light bulb? Why are you asking me? Am I being detained?
So this attachment to the lawsuit suggesting the amount of proposed damages that he hoped to recover. $536,041,100. That's what he wanted. That page claimed that Hovind was owed money that amounted to whatever his ministry would have made each year between 2004 and 2020, assuming a conservative 12% growth rate. His ministry took in $2.5 million in 2006. So by 2020, he says he would have made $12.22 million had the government not interfered with him. Altogether, that comes out to $90 million. $3,500 per day of false imprisonment, which comes out to $10,860,000.
So he had a really, really high estimation of how much money he was going to make based on probably, let's say, Mar-a-Lago numbers. Pinkerbell, Hannah Reloaded on YouTube, goes over sovereign citizens and other conspiracy types. And I am going... Oh, there we go. And I am going to follow that channel. I am now subscribed. Thank you for the recommendation. Let's finish watching this fella.
$500. That's absurd. That's not even realistic in any stretch of the imagination. $300 per month for commissary and phone privileges while in jail. That's a total of $30,000. Seized property valued at approximately $3 million. All the emotional distress and anguish and punitive damages and financial damages, which amounts to hundreds of millions of dollars. There is a number if you're falsely imprisoned, like, you're put in prison and then they find out later that you were completely 100% innocent. There is a number that they'll give you, a daily number. I forget what it is. Maybe it's $70,000 per year or something. So if you spend 10 years in prison and you weren't supposed to be there, you get $700,000 at the end of it, or something like that. Don't quote me on that. I don't remember what it is, but there is an actual figure. $3,500 per day is completely ridiculous. Nobody would get $3,500 a day. That's basically $1.3 million per year. Nobody would get $1.3 million per year for being falsely imprisoned. You do get some money for that, or you can. It's not $1.3 million. This is back to Hemant Mehta. In sum, the total proposed damages came out to $536 million, more than $500 million. In April, however, his attempt hit a major roadblock when U.S. Magistrate Judge Michael J. Frank recommended that the entire case be dismissed. Frank's 26-page ruling said Hansen lacked standing to sue over some of his claims, that the statute of limitations prevented the men from suing even when they had standing, and that even if that wasn't a problem, a criminal like Hovind isn't allowed to sue the prosecutors, judge, government, or an IRS agent just because he's unhappy with how the case turned out. And earlier this week, Judge Witherell adopted that recommendation. Quote, the objections...
In other words... The thing to do about this is have a court case, which we already did, and you were found guilty. Sit back down, sir.
Demonstrate the frivolous and delusional nature of this suit when, among other things, they assert that Plaintiff Hovind and his ministry were beyond the jurisdiction of the U.S., and that the obligation to pay income taxes is tantamount to being conscripted into involuntary servitude as a tax collector for the U.S. He also dismissed the lawsuit with prejudice, meaning Hovind can't file it again. Oh shit! Hovind always deserved to be laughed out of the courtroom. Now he has been. Couldn't have happened to a worse person. As far as I can tell, Hovind hasn't mentioned his loss during his daily live stream yet. There's virtually no chance he would win an appeal, but if anyone's dumb enough to try anyway, it's him. What else has the guy got going on? I would be willing to bet he's going to try to appeal. Because what else does he have going on in life, really? He's just going to sit there and chill and keep on pushing these lawsuits through. Why the fuck not? The guy was banking on his charismatic personality carrying him through the courtroom probably 15 years ago when he got arrested originally for.
The guy was banking on his charismatic personality getting him through the courtroom. And how did that turn out? Do you want to know why I'm not too terribly concerned about Donald J. Trump? There it is. Don't get me wrong. I'm concerned about him in all areas, except whether or not he will be found guilty. He will give the courts no choice because he is of the exact same, he's cut from the exact same cloth as Kent Hovind. And their behavior is pretty much identical. And you can see here how their attitudes about life and the way it works translate to a courtroom. Not very well.
Tax evasion, and probably just now too.
Oh, look at that.
And it didn't work. A courtroom is supposed to be a crucible in which you burn away irrelevance and lies, and you're left with objective truth. Doesn't always work out that way, but that's supposed to be the idealist's goal for the United States courtroom, right? In fact, it almost never works out that way. But people see straight through Hovind's, happy, smiley, charismatic personality and his arguments that have holes all through them. I mean, he can sit there and lie all he wants to an evangelical audience, but it's different in the courtroom. Does not work that way. And I guess he's learning that the hard way.
Owen Morgan, a.k.a. Telltale, ladies and gentlemen. I find this person very useful for understanding a community which is of concern now. It's useful in understanding the mentality of the marks. It's also incredibly useful in understanding the mentality, the strategy, and the business of the con artists who take advantage of the marks. Kent Hovind is the pioneer of this particular scam, this particular flavor of scam. Donald Trump is a practitioner of it. He just naturally fell into it. And even though I'm quite sure Donald Trump is not aware of Kent Hovind, even though I'm quite sure Donald Trump is not modeling himself intentionally off Kent Hovind, I think Donald Trump will behave exactly like Kent Hovind. It also means that there will be another one, and another, until we learn to deal with these people generally, until we develop as a society an immunity for this scam, because we're used to seeing it. When somebody shows up in your town with a cart full of snake oil and says, "Say, fella, I've got a cure for you. But you don't know what I'm sick with. Doesn't matter. Common cold, I've got the cure, snake oil. But I've got stage 4 cancer. Doesn't matter. Throw away your cancer meds. Stage 4? Seriously? I bet it doesn't matter. Take this. You know what? Let's do a different one. I've got stage 2 cancer. It's very treatable. No worries. Throw away your cancer meds. Here's snake oil. We know. We know what to do. We put that person on a rail, and we run them out of town. We tar and feather him and toss him in a ditch on the outskirts of town and say, don't come round these parts no more. We need to develop that intrinsic understanding as a society. If we don't want to be harmed by this anymore, then the thing to do is make it common knowledge what this scam is and how this scam works and how it looks and sounds, so people just smell it when it's in the room. Speaking of, I'm going to go burn one down. Thank you for hearing me rant about Kent Hovind and checking out Owen Morgan with me. Let's read some comments.